thinking about it. So can we talk for an hour about Alien 2 on Earth? Is that possible?
I'm sure we can.
We'll
All
find
things
out.
are possible.
Okay. I guess we'll get rolling. I don't know. Luke, are you going to the gym today?
Yeah, but we start late today, so it's all good.
Okay. 97, I believe.
In the year 1997.
I think your mic just shorted out a bit there. Also, isn't that what Mark does? Our sometimes guest.
Yeah, apparently that's his catchphrase.
Yeah. Yes, this is Matt.
This is Luke.
You're screaming in a sci-fi sanctuary, songs of praise and screaming. That's right. Mark is not the guest today. Today's guest is also returning in our October mainstay. It's Henrique Couto, filmmaker. Hi.
Hello. How you guys doing?
It's all groovy.
I'm doing great. You don't realize you've accidentally done me a big favor today. Because I was also 20 minutes late waking up this morning. But because you were 5 minutes later, I got away with it scot-free.
I'm always here to help.
Well, there's me sitting around for about 5 minutes. Am I on crack? But yeah. Does time not work the way I thought time did? That's whatever.
Oh yeah, Matt sat there at 8:30 exactly, already dressed for work.
Yeah.
I'm still snoring away. Apparently, I didn't set an alarm this morning.
Anyway, I was telling Henrik before he started this movie apparently was making my eye bleed a little bit. So
Oh, nice.
it's why my wife's like, what's wrong with your eye? I'm like, I watched Event Horizon. That's what's wrong with my eye.
Very festive.
This was my second viewing of it. I saw it opening night back in 1997, I think with my dad. Was relatively pissed off by the movie. And when we started this podcast, I was like, oh, we're gonna have to do Event Horizon eventually, aren't we? But it took 3 years. So I guess that's cool. But I really need to share my buddy's story. Actually, he was the quote unquote Irish guy in Psycho Vixens, because in university he had the flu, went to the university health center, and they gave him some kind of flu medicine, but he couldn't sleep. So he was up for 72 hours and just didn't want to move because he also had the flu. And someone comes in and puts on Event Horizon. And yeah, I actually did invite him to this podcast to talk about it. He's like, hell no, I'm not watching that movie again. He's terrified of Sam Neill. So last night's viewing was only my second viewing of this one.
Wow. All right.
Luke, where do you stand?
I may have caught it back in the VHS days, but I don't really remember it. So I've had 20 years of people telling me this film is so fucked up and scary. And then I've had you tell me A, about how much you hate the jump scares, and B, that same story about your friend being put off Sam Neill for life by it. So when I finally sat down and watched this film 2 nights ago, I was expecting to have, the most pants-shittingly scary experience of my life.
It's not, no, like I said, I think I put the word annoying with the jump scares, right?
Yeah. So yeah, no, this was basically my first experience of it this week.
Yeah. So are you going to go back to that dimension?
Possibly. It was a pretty cool film.
The hell dimension. Henrik, I almost did suggest this one, but I was like, yeah, I'll just leave it open October, and then you just spat it back out at me. This was actually going to be my suggestion had I suggested something. So tell me about you in the event.
Oh man, well, I remember when Event Horizon came out in theaters, I wanted to go see it, but I would have been 11 when it hit the theater. And my mother was like, no, I've heard that's way too scary. But her mind must have just went blank, because 7 months later she rented me the tape and just handed it to me. So the first time I saw it, I was probably about 11 or 12. And I remember being very startled, because I was already, by the time I was 12, I had been a long time, by my own definition, Star Trek fan. I'd been into Trek since I was 7 years old, really into it. So it was kind of startling and refreshing to have space depicted as incredibly dangerous, and just a place where you can die real easy. So I've probably seen the movie, I mean, maybe 10 times or less. Like, I've definitely seen it. I've shown it to a lot of people over the years, and I've definitely put it on a couple of times. It's part of the Sam Neill double feature, the two Sam Neill movies that always scare me, which are Event Horizon and In the Mouth of Madness. Both of those movies always leave me feeling a little odd. Like they leave me a little spooked. So I always enjoy putting those on, and I always enjoy introducing people to them, because I'm like, oh no, let's watch Event Horizon. You like sci-fi? Here we go, jerk.
I guess you can get away with that because you have the home theater setup, right?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So I had been too lazy to get my giant 120-inch screen set up. I'd just been using my television. And last night I made the decision I'm going to rewatch Event Horizon before the show. And my girlfriend was about to leave, and I was like, you could leave, or you could stay another 92 minutes and experience Event Horizon. And she'd never seen it, and she's a massive sci-fi nerd. So I pulled the screen down, put it on, and I was jumping at all the jump scares, even when I knew they were coming, just from the sheer brightness of the screen and loudness of the speakers. That alone takes care of business.
Yeah, I was gonna say you can't be like properly annoyed with this movie unless you see it in like a theater setting or something reasonably approximating. So Luke, you can't actually be annoyed with this movie. That's why you're like, oh yeah, it's kind of groovy. I think I'll revisit it because you watched it on your laptop.
I didn't watch it on my laptop. I watched it on my TV.
Okay, but yeah,
Lights off, but yeah, not full cinema experience.
Yeah. I know the one that I will never forgive the movie for is the one where Jason Isaacs just kind of rolls up and's like, what's going on? But they play it as like a giant jump scare. I was like, what the hell? He's just saying what's up. That's not even dramatic or anything. It's just pissing me off.
The film is haunted just like the spaceship.
Yeah, really.
Just like the other side of the galaxy.
Well, I guess we're gonna blame that on Mr. Anderson. I did notice this one just says Paul Anderson, and I do wonder if in 1997 I did roll in thinking, man, I like Boogie Nights. How's this one going to play? I mean, maybe I'd worked out it's two different people, but not from the credit because they did not put the WS between his names in this one. So you could.
So yeah, I was wondering if it even is the same, which Paul Anderson it was.
Oh yeah, this is
it's Paul WS.
Yeah, this is the DNA of his video game movies. It's just there's no video game. Well, at least not before the game.
Oh, this is surprisingly good for a Paul W.S. Anderson movie.
Yeah.
That's why I assumed it was a different guy.
I will give Event Horizon that is by far the best Paul W.S. Anderson movie.
Yeah, I think that's safe.
Let me go ahead and give a plot on this one before we run too far afield. Pull that up. In 2047, a team of astronauts are tasked to explore Neptune, where the ship Event Horizon has reappeared. The ship went missing several years prior on a mission to test an interstellar wormhole drive. I guess they call it a gravity drive, whatever. Among the team is Dr. Weir, inventor of that drive. They dock with a massive craft to find its crew missing, but plenty of gore stains as evidence that something horrible has happened. See, when the drive engaged, the Event Horizon passed through some kind of hellish reality, and something from that realm came back with the ship. The rescue team is harassed by disturbing memories and hallucinations from their past, and many of them begin to off themselves in bizarre ways. But not Dr. Weir. He's into this shit, mutilates himself, rips off his clothes, and becomes some sort of satanic Sam Neill, bent on keeping everyone surviving on board the Event Horizon for its return trip to hell. But 3 crew members manage to escape and destroy the ship. Or do they?
Jump scare.
That's what this should be, jump scare the movie. I called them a rescue team. Maybe I should have said salvage team, or I don't know, somewhere in between.
Yeah, they had guys. They had like a medical person and a trauma person and a rescue guy. So
yeah,
they were hoping to find survivors.
Yeah, I noticed that when I was rewatching it last night. I was like, oh yeah, there are 3 medical personnel, so they were definitely ready for whatever might happen.
No, they weren't.
Well, okay, that's a good point.
They were ready for whatever you would expect to happen.
They were for whatever terrors can be comprehended by the human mind, but not terrors unable to be comprehended by the human mind.
Well, I was talking to one of my friends that I was podcasting this last night. And I was like, he's like, who's in that? I'm like, Sam Neill. He's like, oh, that's the poor man's Harrison Ford. It's like, okay.
Huh. Is that how we see Sam Neill?
I don't know. Sam Neill's got his own Sam Neill space, but
yeah, I'd always seen him as like Hugo Weaving is the evil twin to good Sam Neill. But after this film, now I realize they're just both evil twins.
Oh yeah. Once you get satanic Sam Neill in your mind, that's good. And then of course there's Mountains of Madness, is it? Yeah.
Mountains of Madness is the Lovecraft book.
Okay.
Yeah, you're right. Absolutely.
Okay. I never get those right. So
I'm pretty sure Lovecraft is a name that will come up again later in this podcast. So
yeah, I was about to
possible.
say that, but then I was like, I guess I should talk about the actors first.
Yeah. No, because Sam Neill for me is still Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
Which I think this film kind of plays on, right? Because at the start of the film, you're like, well, he's the science guy. He's Sam Neill. I'm on his side. I like him. Why are these spacemen being mean to him? And by the end, you're like, oh, fuck Sam Neill.
Sam Neill has an air of competence, like a high air of competence. So, when he walks into the room, you're like, okay, let's listen to this guy. His voice is very soothing. He'll get us through this. And he's
Maybe
like, we're flying the ship to hell.
Maybe that's one of the weird disconnects I had seeing it the first time, because you are kind of expecting like, okay, I'm following this guy, he's a hero. What the fuck's happening?
Yeah.
Lawrence Fishburne, I guess he hadn't quite got, we all knew who he was by this point, but he hadn't quite become like, Lawrence Fishburne yet. I think he has to do Matrix before we get action Lawrence in our minds.
I think this is one of the first times I've seen pre-Matrix Lawrence Fishburne. So I'm not used to seeing him with such a great head of hair and looking young and slim.
Well, the most fun one, the way callback is he's weirdly in Apocalypse Now.
Apocalypse Now, yeah. I've seen that like
a 16 years old. So that's pretty trippy. But because now you watch it and it's like, oh yeah, I can easily change my I'm following his character, which is kind of like what an unprogressive Ripley, because he's kind of the minor character that ends up spearheading the escape or whatever.
Well, my favorite thing about Lawrence Fishburne in the movie is he's constantly side-eyeing like everything being said to him about the ship. Like he's constantly just like, I was almost expecting every time Sam Neill said something, he'd look at him and be like, what the fuck did you just say? Like he just looked like he was really mad and ready to fight him. Like he was just like, because everybody was bullying him when he came out of stasis, and then and Lawrence Fishburne's reaction is like, yeah, you might have died or something. Anyway, we got a place to go.
It's like, when you hate a celebrity for no reason, you're just like, oh, fuck that guy. And then a few years later, something comes out and suddenly everyone hates them. And you feel like, yes, see, I was right. It's like Lawrence Fishburne, he hates Sam Neill for no fucking reason. But then by the end of the film, he's like, yeah, see, I was right to hate this guy. You should listen to me.
He can
my intuition.
He can see auras. He had a bad aura.
Well, I think they set it up, right? He hates him because they were about to get leave and suddenly they've been sent to Neptune. So
yeah,
actually, fair enough.
Yeah, and I because I think that all started with the fact that it became very clear very early on that Dr. Weir was not, it wasn't hiding that he wasn't telling them stuff, because they had to wait until they woke up from hypersleep to actually know where they were going. And I could see that making me pretty grouchy, especially what with spacefaring being so dangerous. Like I had actually, for my podcast, we did a bunch of research about the Mary Celeste, the first ship. Super fun story to read about. But what I ended up learning from all of the research was just how unbelievably dangerous seafaring was at the beginning. Like that it was that, people would be like, yeah, so the whole crew was found dead on the ship. And they're like, that's too bad. I'm gonna miss Tony. Like, oh no, that's the ship from 3 days ago. No, this is a different one where everybody's dead. And they're like, oh yeah, people just die in the ocean. And that's kind of the vibe I got on Event Horizon, was that it's like, listen, we're a merchant ship with some, a little bit of like military undertones. We're just going to do our best to get there and get back with as many of us as possible, since this is as janky as playing Oregon Trail 2. So
maybe 3. I don't know. Roland, I want to roll down a few more actors. Luke, did you recognize who you just saw?
Which of the two? There are 2 more I recognize. Obviously, Jason Isaacs.
Oh yeah.
Just weird seeing him this young.
The other one for me, weird seeing them that young's Jolie Richardson. As 10 years later, I had a run in obsessively watching Nip Tuck with friends, so she was very much on my radar. But
okay.
It's like a 40-year-old, whereas here she's like a youngin, and it's surprising.
No, the one for me is I think his name in this film was Cooper.
Right.
He went on to play the FBI agent in Richard T. Jones is the actor. He was in Terminator Sarah Connor Chronicles.
Yeah, he played Ellison.
Yeah.
The FBI agent turned private investigator. Yeah. I'm actually doing a rewatch of that series right now.
Great.
So I also was like, wow, he's a skinny little baby.
Yeah.
He's like not just fitter in this movie. He's like friggin' like a swimmer's body. He's
he's meant to be like
muscly.
He is quote unquote the sexy one in this.
I won't deny
that's his character, right?
That pencil thin mustache he got rocking in there too. Woo, mucho caliente.
I don't know if this was intentional at all, but if you watch the Orville, they have their engineer Lamar played by Jay Lee, and I swear that's like almost the same character in this movie with Cooper. It's just weird, like they talk exactly the same. So I wonder if that was actually a reference, like someone was really into Event Horizon or something and modeled the character a bit.
Because he ends up there. He's one of the 2 who survives, right?
Yeah. Well, because it seems like he's dead, and then he like does that insane blast and ends up somehow blasting back to his ship, which was highly improbable, but that's fine. I mean, he was like, you couldn't see the ship anymore. How do you know where to jet to?
He's a professional.
Right. Okay.
All right.
Because the ship didn't want to let him go.
Actually, you know what? You might be onto something. The ship may have helped him find his way back.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
The first moment in that movie that really, I find the movie pretty spooky throughout, but the first time it really got me was so early in the movie, the trauma doctor mentions that he, speaks a little Latin, and he's pretty sure he heard Latin in one of those broadcasts that they were hearing from the Event Horizon before they arrived, which, by the way, are like, the whole movie is so much scarier just from the sound of their broadcast. It just sounds like screaming groans of hell unleashed. And when they say like, we're hearing something coming from the Event Horizon, and they play that sound, Rachel just turned to me and we're flying toward that sound.
That's like going to Saturn if you've Saturn if you've heard the rings of Saturn sounds.
They
have.
But so it was creepy enough hearing that, and then him saying like, I think that they're speaking Latin, and I think they're saying save me. And then later on, once they're on the ship and everything, he's like, I spent more time with it and I misunderstood. It's saying save yourself.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, Event Horizon spooky.
That's one of my favorite tropes in any horror, is just the weird, scary recording. That always does it for me. Because I think sound can scare me a lot better than visuals can.
Oh, for sure. Sound grabs your imagination and makes it just kind of go around. I just like that they all don't really flinch to it, because I guess space recordings are just really creepy sounding in general, which, based on everything I know about the sounds of space, it is creepy.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess they're like, oh no, they're not being tortured for eternity and unspeakable terror impossible to comprehend with the human mind. It's just it bounced off a couple moons or something. That's why it sounds like cats in a blender. They're fine. This is all great.
Luke, the one I was getting at earlier, just to just get back to the actors real quick. Catherine Quinlan, who's kind of doing the proto Carrie Ann Moss in here, was in
She was
Apollo
in
13,
Apollo
right? And just
yeah.
same year looks so different. You know, I guess that's
Yeah.
what a good haircut does for somebody. So yeah, I was like, oh, okay. And you know, yeah, I was just like, okay, yeah. Beehives. I guess I'm not for a beehive. Yeah. So this is kind of like, you know, we already mentioned Lovecraft a little bit, but it's kind of like, you know, the baby's first unspeakable horror book or something, right? Like, it's not that deep on it.
No.
Or is it? I mean,
Well,
you can tell me
it
I'm
is a
wrong.
really cool idea that, like, when a spaceship goes in the space between spaces, it'll fuck you up. There's shit in there. And I feel like that's something you see mentioned in passing in other sci-fi. But this is one of the only places where that's the whole plot. It's like, yeah, when you're in that wormhole, you're in hell.
Yeah. Oh, there's the Star Trek where Barclay's finding the worm people. I guess it's kind of an in-between space.
Oh man, yeah. Well, and Voyager wasn't afraid to every now and then be like, yeah, these are like space alien ghosts. And they eat us. We better do something about it.
Before they eat us. Yeah.
Lol, Delta Quadrant problems. Am I right?
But in this one, yeah, it's like, are they explaining too much? Not enough? I don't know.
I kind of like that they didn't dive crazy deep because they wouldn't have much information. And frankly, whatever the hell is on the other side of the, you know, the dark matter, I don't think you can just nail it down with words. I think it's just an experience. And I love that the experience either drives you to kill yourself, which I assume is the sane response, or you become like Sam Neill's character and you're like, I looked into the abyss and I liked it. Now I want more for everyone. It's like, well, you're coping in a really interesting way, Dr. Weir.
Now, did Dr. Weir just design the gravity drive or the whole ship?
At first, I thought it was just the drive, but then I think this is a case of the writers didn't really make a distinction between those two things.
Yeah.
Okay. I was just saying, because the Event Horizon itself, the interior was clearly designed by a madman. Like, they have their Cerebro thing with the dark matter machine, then just a bunch of spikes for no reason.
I love that design of the warp core. Looks like something out of hell.
Yeah, it's Clive Barker's warp core.
It looks like those weird like orbs full of holy water the Pope has.
Yeah, I guess that's just to tell us, you know, Dr. Weir wasn't all there to start with. So it's like, we need lots of spikes. I mean, I guess you could have some science explanation for that, but yeah, it does just look like, yeah, like a medieval torture chamber for some reason.
But I don't think enough, like you mentioned it yourself, Henry, not enough stuff explores that, like, space is just really scary on its own.
Yeah.
It's just a big nothing where you die.
Yeah. Well, and that whole sequence when one of the crew members tries to kill himself in an airlock, and which I love that sequence, and how Lawrence Fishburne is trying to catch up with him on the other side of the airlock, and he's yelling instructions to him about, like, blow all of the air out of your lungs, hold yourself down like a child, because his plan is, if he can just keep him alive enough, when they reclose the airlock, they can probably get him back to, you know, eventually, you know, get him recovered. And all I could think is, like, the way he was telling him, it's so straightforward. I was like, man, how many times do you think he's had to repeat those instructions when working in space? I was like, listen, there is a way to survive this. It's not pretty. So I need you to do exactly what I say and don't ask a single question. Unfortunately, life preservers, they don't pull it up here. There's a lot worse things going on.
Did his eyes pop out?
They basically exploded.
Yeah, you start to compress and freeze and just all this awful stuff all at once. And see, that's why I like this movie so much, because it reminded me that space is super scary. And there's stuff like some of the other stuff that's made me think about how scary space is was not in and of itself very scary, like Gravity. the Sandra Bullock movie. I liked Gravity. I thought it was a fun sci-fi, light sci-fi action thriller thing. But it wasn't a horror movie. I did find myself like, oh God, like don't die. And everything is like, how do I not die in space this time? Okay, now next time, how do I not die in space? But obviously it doesn't pull off the unbelievable horrors impossible to comprehend with the human mind.
I wonder what Neil deGrasse Tyson has to say about Event Horizon.
Honestly, he said something about everything. I feel like there's probably
you just made me think, right? I'm gonna have to Google Neil deGrasse Tyson Event Horizon, because I bet he's had something to say on the matter.
Well, and he loves to comment on movies.
Yep.
I do think Interstellar kind of stole the wormhole demonstration thunder from this movie, because now everyone thinks about the scene from Interstellar, but
interestingly, in the new Thor movie, mild spoiler, there's a scene where someone's asking her about wormholes, and she does that same thing, and she's like, "Yeah, just go and watch Event Horizon or Interstellar; they'll explain it."
Okay, she cites both. Good for her.
Yep.
Okay, so it didn't completely steal the thunder out of this movie, because it did. I mean, I think in 1997, this was an explanation where it's like, whoa, that actually like taught me something in this whack sci-fi horror movie.
Annoyingly, when you search Neil deGrasse Tyson Event Horizon, you just get stuff about real black holes.
That kind of
try
makes
Neil
sense.
deGrasse Tyson Sam Neill. We can get through this. We can think our way out of it. We can find his opinions about Event Horizon. They're too important.
You cannot think your way out of hell. Actually, maybe you can. Maybe that's the way out of hell. You think your way out of hell. I mean, if these guys would just chill out and have a pina colada, maybe they'd have fewer problems. They'd still have the hallucinations though, so I guess that's an issue.
Yeah, they're pretty gnarly. I was surprised some of the computer generated effects really held up pretty decent.
The only part I remember watching and thinking like, oh, that looks bad, is right at the start. You're seeing just like random stuff floating around in the spaceship. Yeah, and I guess because it's all things that I've seen, right? I've seen a wristwatch and a bottle, so I know when I'm looking at a CGI one.
Yeah, but they weren't quite as powerful. Oddly enough, they did a better job with the liquid floating, I think.
Yeah. Well, because I've never seen liquid floating in zero G, right? So maybe it does look like that. And yeah, all the spaceships and everything looked great, I thought.
Also, the computers had liquid down early, right? T1000.
Yeah.
Abyss.
Well, Star Trek 6?
You're thinking Klingon blood, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a cool scene.
So, I mean, liquid it would be one of the first things you can CGI, probably because it does look fine. You don't really have to finesse it. Otherwise, you gotta do.
No, I'm sorry. Yeah.
I was just gonna say, otherwise you gotta do Toy Story because it's 1995. But
you got a friend in hell. I thought I was really surprised. So Lawrence Fishburne's character sees this image of a man he watched burn alive in space. That's like what's haunting him. And I thought that was startlingly decent, because I knew just by the fact that you could see the actor's face so clearly that the fire was definitely being placed there through some trickery. And I thought he looked surprisingly decent and nightmarish, even though as I watched it, I was like, I know they had to do this with, computers and compositing, because you can't just have a guy's eyes wide open like that with flames licking his whole body. You can't.
They did a good job of not showing him to us for too long.
Mm-hmm.
So the little shots we got, they worked really well.
Well, and I think that having his face be so horrific and having him, like you were saying about how easy sound scares people, having him like yelling and demanding, why did you let me die and all this, and having the wild eyes and the crazy face, I think that helped too, because it just makes it scary instead of making you sit there and pick it apart and go like, is that real fire? Instead, you're just like, holy shit, that guy had a bad day. And then
when in reality, this is what stoked Fishburne's character to start meticulously memorizing survival instructions for all emergency situations.
Yep. That was his origin story for being sensible.
So from the outside, the event horizon's really, really, really big, and from the inside, it doesn't seem that big. It's like a reverse TARDIS, I think.
Which I think is quite true for spaceships, right? The space for just people to mill about probably isn't that big.
True, yeah, but they got that giant impractical tunnel that they pressurize and fill with oxygen.
That's what I was about to mention. I was like, that part is really cavernous, and then everything else is like slightly bigger than a submarine would be.
A few nights ago, actually, because I was procrastinating watching Event Horizon, I was on YouTube and put on one of the Starship size comparisons. It's the half screen channel on YouTube if you're looking for it. But the Event Horizon's really big. Like the Enterprise D would be like a bee buzzing around the front cockpit area, apparently. So
well, when you see the the other ship approaching the Event Horizon, the Event Horizon is like the Death Star to them.
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's my whole point with the TARDIS, the reverse TARDIS. I'm like, it seems relatively homey inside, except for all the gore and spikes and fire and blood, but and weird angles.
Who's counting?
And it's a weird ship.
Yeah.
The design of it. What ship have we seen that was similar?
Like
where it's a bit
ship?
at the front, a bit at the back, and there's like a.
Am I supposed to say the Discovery straight up, or was that a rhetorical question?
The Discovery?
Yeah, 2001.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I thought that was what I was thinking of.
Okay. That one being much smaller, of course, but
but that design of, like the sort of road in between two other pits, which I'm sure was deliberate, right?
Yeah.
You don't accidentally use the 2001 spaceship.
Well, and the idea that you sever half of it so that you can get away from the gravity drive if it explodes, which is very similar to the saucer separation on the Enterprise D. Is that you want to be able to get away from your own engine if it decides to turn on you.
Which especially made sense here because it was a brand new experimental engine.
Yeah. Too bad running away wouldn't have done justice against that. Oh, geez, we were thinking just it would explode. This is ridiculous.
Sorry, I was just real quick. Maybe I mentioned when we did 2001, but can I just be like super geek and say the one thing I still can't get my head around?
Go on.
How is the shuttle, the pod bay have gravity? On 2001.
How does any of it have gravity?
It's spinning in a wheel, so it makes sense for most of it. And in the center, it's clearly no gravity, but the pod bay has gravity.
I can't remember where the pod bay was.
Right under the anyway, it's always bugged me. Okay, sorry. Okay. like they thought about so much of that to make it kind of realistic, but then there's that like one thing that like, no, that doesn't work at all. So okay, moving on. Event Horizon, it just has gravity.
Yeah. Well,
it doesn't
turn it back on. Yeah.
I guess it's gravity plating. I don't really know how that's supposed to work. Maybe you just have like jets to suck in the air and drag that, so no one can talk to each other. What? I can't hear you.
It has something to do with tachyons. I'm positive. Tachyons.
Sure. Why not?
Yeah, this comes from the school of sci-fi where just we have gravity because we can't afford not to.
Yeah, really. Walls are covered in gore. Look at that. Forget about the gravity.
Well, and I remember one of the first moments that really shocked me as a youngster watching this movie was when the body shatters. That was horrific when the power comes on, the gravity kicks on, and then that corpse falls to the ground and just breaks into a bunch of pieces. That freaked me out so bad as a kid. Ugh.
Luke, you look like you're being thoughtful and about saying.
Oh no, I just got a notification telling me that my microphone has changed to the microphone I assumed it had always been.
Oh, okay, that's exciting.
Maybe it briefly unplugged and plugged back in. Or maybe I sounded shit for the first half of this episode.
You sound exactly the same to me. So
yeah, okay.
So I'm not going to concern myself with that. Okay. Let's see the design of that. Lots of hell.
So when they first, it's when the medical lady is on the ship the first time, and she's like, "Oh, there's a tiny little bit of blood," and then behind her you see that like amorphous corpse mess with just like flesh and skulls and whatever. Very cool visually, but also straight out of Doom.
Yeah. I would agree. Yeah.
And yeah, knowing that this is the same Paul W.S. Anderson who went on to do all the video game adaptations, and knowing that this is a film about a spaceship that accidentally went to hell, this is very Doom.
So is this a better version of Doom than Doom?
Oh, you mean than the Doom movie?
Yeah.
Maybe. It is scary and cool, but also it doesn't have much action.
Yeah, it doesn't have running around with like a rail gun sort of stuff. So
yeah,
that energy.
I actually haven't seen the Doom movie since it came out. I'd imagine it doesn't hold up great.
That is one of Anderson's, yeah.
No, I don't think so.
Okay,
maybe it was.
Maybe I don't think it's bowl level.
It's not Uwe Boll. But I don't think Paul W. Anderson can get The Rock.
Well, he's. I mean, like Uwe Boll's like completely outside of the system, whereas I mean Anderson's like at least like kind of in Hollywood hired gun territory. I think.
I can't even pronounce his name. Andrzej Budkowaliak.
Okay. Did he make anything better?
I'm just looking at his filmography now. Well, it says also searched Jet Li, so I'm guessing he did something good.
Okay.
He did Terms of Endearment, Falling Down. Yeah, this guy.
Wait, he didn't direct Falling
Down.
Cinematographer.
He only directed a couple of films, and they're all terrible.
Okay, so he should have stuck to the
He did Doom, Street Fighter, The Legend of Chun-Li, Cradle to the Grave. Yeah, no, he's mostly a cinematographer. I see.
Okay. ACE?
Well, that makes kind of sense because Doom had that really cool first-person bit.
That's the only part people remember, right?
That and the BFG gag.
But yeah. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Someone throw in a good thought. Where are we?
Good thoughts. I'm not very good at those.
My brain imploded in space.
So no one in the film, like, they're all really surprised when he tells them that it makes a black hole. But the ship's called the Event Horizon.
They're like space truckers, alien style. They're not scientists.
I guess so.
Although they do have a lot of medical knowledge. But yeah, that's a black hole. That's different.
Yeah, one of them speaks Latin. Like, they're not idiots.
The Romans didn't invent black holes.
I do wonder if maybe they didn't put two and two together simply because spending a life in space, you would find the concept of creating a black hole even more preposterous. So they were like, oh, you just named it a space thing. Black holes, like they're a thing. Because they all are very surprised, but like, wait, you made a black hole? And they're like, yeah. And it's like, that doesn't sound safe or okay. And this is the one part where somebody says, like, do what?
They do that in CERN, right? They make mini black holes.
Yeah.
And open gates to hell.
But yeah, nothing's ever been the same since they ran that damn thing. Wasn't it one of them like even said like this is what happens when you break nature's laws or whatever? Because it was like he broke all of the laws of our universe to try to travel faster. And I just can't get over the idea. I love the idea that like you're kind of crossing like the unknown of sci-fi, but like with the unknown that's more popular, on Earth, which would be like ghosts, demons, monsters. I just love that they just cut a hole in space time and they're like, hey, this is gonna be great. And on the inside, it's like, oh, never mind. This is this is like world ending. Okay, this is like a species ending. This is bad.
What I really love about it is it does do that, but it doesn't do it in like too obvious a way.
Yeah.
Because around the same time, right, we got Ghosts of Mars.
Yeah.
Which is like, here is space with ghosts.
Yeah.
But this is like, space already has, you tear a hole in the universe and go to another dimension. What if that dimension was just fucked up?
Yeah.
I think it works really well here because, it is bringing in like old school, like hell imagery, but doing it in a way that still feels sci-fi.
Yeah.
So
And
let's
and it never loses that. It never starts to feel like it's literally Hellraiser in space. Not to be
Yeah.
confused with the Hellraiser they actually did in space.
Uh,
But yeah, they managed to keep it moving along with the sci-fi, a good amount of sci-fi tropes and the fun kind of sci-fi tropes.
Yeah.
You know, walking through corridors, talking about running out of oxygen. You know, our ship is now exploded. You know, the usual things you deal with when you're out and about in space.
and we can apply this to Trek continuity and just say the technology got better. And whenever
Yeah.
the Enterprise is flying around in their warp bubble, outside the warp bubble is hell.
Yeah.
That's the final step to really teach the Borg a lesson is we drop them off there.
Push them out of the
Assimilate
warp
these.
bubble.
You thought species 8472 was bad, huh? With their fluidic space.
And not as cool as chaotic space.
No, not.
So yeah, we mentioned it a little. I guess we can get into it more. Like this is Lovecraft's whole shtick, right? Was looking not so exactly, but his thing was like, yeah, looking up at space and realizing how small we are is really scary.
Yeah.
And I love it when something really leans into that. And this is like, yeah, you know, if you just peel back one layer of the universe, guess what? It's really scary.
Yeah. Well, and the new thing, people, because there's been a resurgence in the last few years of some Lovecraft adaptations and stuff. And the new phrase for what Lovecraft stories are is cosmic terror.
Yeah,
That's
cosmic
been the phrase
horror.
people
Yeah,
using,
yeah.
which I love that. Yeah, cosmic horror. I love that phrasing because it's nice because it tells me it's like it's not quite space, but it has to do with space. But you may never go to space, but you'll feel really close to space now. You know, like, I love that very much. And I do think it has kind of like I feel like it has kind of like a light nudge wink to Lovecraft. I mean, they didn't go all the way. There's no tentacles. There's no like hinting at one singular elder god or something, but there is a lot of that ambiguity. And that was something, that's why whenever I think of anything Lovecraft, you always make the joke of like, oh yeah, horror is beyond all human comprehension. Because was my favorite go-to line he ever made. You know, it's just, I'm not going to describe it. I'm just going to say this is beyond human comprehension. You'll figure it out. Also, you know, I'm Lovecraft. I'm very racist. And that was, we all know. But
the reason it doesn't bother me that Lovecraft was racist is because he was dead 100 years before I bought his books. So, you know, I'm not supporting him.
I think that he's just in hindsight so eccentric. It's hard to stay mad at him.
Yeah.
Just like, what a weirdo you are.
Oh, and yeah, the fact that he was like a pathetic little man terrified of everything different is why he wrote such good horror.
Yeah, no, he just lived his whole life scared. It's kind of like Poe. When I read Poe, I'm like, man, this guy's scared all the time. This guy's scared a lot.
Like, you know, I don't think a badass tough guy is going to write good horror.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point.
Like, what's Dwayne The Rock Johnson's horror going to be like? Zombie appeared, punched its lights out. I went to bed and slept soundly for 8 hours.
Yeah, now it's, I mean, you know, more recently it's been what, Clive Barker and Stephen King, you know, a stiff wind will blow those guys over.
Yeah.
Yeah, really.
But I was gonna say, I guess this movie makes Sam Neill an honorary old one, right?
Yeah. He's the guy who, like, in whatever way he contacted whatever is on the other side there and joined it.
I mean, I will say that's the guy definitely remembered being in this movie. Otherwise, I was like, oh yeah, Lawrence Fishburne's in this movie. Hey, Jason Isaacs isn't old yet. Amazing, you know. But I didn't remember that. But yeah, you can't unforget certain imagery scarred into your brain, right?
And these are the two scary ones the really scary flicks he did were Event Horizon and In the Mouth of Madness. And I've noticed that with my friends who are a little bit less intense about movies, they'll sometimes get them confused because, you know, they're both scary flicks and Sam Neill's one of the main characters. So because I've said like I've asked them if they've seen In the Mouth of Madness, like, yeah, it's so scary, and then they start talking about it and they immediately like it's like a horror movie, but it's in space. And I'm like, that's not in the Mouth of Madness. That's Event Horizon. Are you sure? Because everybody's pretty much in the Mouth of Madness in that movie. And I'm like, well, no, you are right, but it's the Event Horizon.
I mean, but you couldn't flip the titles because it wouldn't work the other way. So
no, I don't think so.
if you call that one Event Horizon, make that'd be less sense than the ship that doesn't have a black hole, you know? I guess as far as how does this one hold up, I'm just kind of in a weird space where I watched it opening night and watched it 25 years later last night. But it definitely comes up a lot. People, I feel like people mention it with it, but don't watch it so much. Am I wrong? you watch it 10 times or less, but
yeah.
Maybe it's a film with a concept that's really cool. So people are like, oh yeah, Event Horizon, that's the one where the spaceship goes to hell. But then how often do they sit down and watch it?
No, I mean, and being somebody who hangs out with a lot of people who are really into the horror space, Event Horizon is definitely synonymous with science fiction in those circles. Whenever somebody's like, oh yeah, I like Star Trek, oh yeah, I like this, there's inevitably in like a horror group on Facebook or whatever, there's almost immediately somebody will be like, yeah, and Event Horizon, everybody will like fist bump digitally over Event Horizon. I think that's a movie that did not get appreciated in the late 90s as well as it should have been. I think that's a classic example of DVD did that movie a lot of favors, and cable TV did that movie a lot of favors. And I think that we're at a point now where it kind of feels like no one's seen it, but at the same time you find out almost immediately everybody's seen it kind of feeling. So you still feel that like camaraderie, like, oh man, you like Event Horizon. Meanwhile, it's because most people have finally gotten on board with it. It aged surprisingly well, aside from the opening and closing music, which was 90s.
The closing credits really caught me off guard, because like you don't end horror movies with a song like that anymore.
No, I think I have a good note for that. Oh, they're all fucked, aren't they? Drum and bass music says yes. That was my note on it. Oh, and then we got the shot right near the end. There's just the random shot of maggots. That was kind of weird.
Maggots are scary, man.
I know. Yeah. It was like the last 5 seconds where they finally decided to like get into that one.
Yeah, I feel like, because when you see the posters and stuff for this film, it's just a big old spaceship. Like, did they forget to market that this film is a horror movie about hell?
Actually, I think yes. I don't think I went in fully expecting a horror movie when I saw it in the movie.
So maybe that's kind of why it didn't have the success it could have had, because no one knew what it was. So probably a lot of the public were just like, oh, boring spaceship movie. Now I'll pass.
I remember the television coverage making it seem like it was a sci-fi action movie. And I would say calling it an action movie is a pretty big stretch. But I think that may be why. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if because it was not a cheap movie. I wouldn't be surprised if it got greenlit and then was in production, and then the person who greenlit it got fired. And then the person who was now in charge of the studio was like, well, we can't ditch it. It's got some names in it. We spent a lot of money. So let's lean into the science fiction, because I, for whatever reason, believe no one will want to see a horror movie. And because that happens a lot where things get marketed a weird way. Like, the best example ever is Taken. The first Taken movie, its initial marketing was that it was a thriller. It's not a thrill. It's a balls to the walls action movie.
Well, that's why the name is Taken, right? Because you're meant to be like, oh, it's a scary thriller about being kidnapped.
Yeah.
And like, no, it's a ridiculous male power fantasy about shooting everyone who's ever touched your daughter.
It's a movie about Liam Neeson beating up France, period. And it's the fastest way to spend 84 minutes in your life.
Oh yeah.
It really is. But like, I remember seeing the trailers and it seeming like this trudging thriller movie, and I was kind of like, yeah, I might see it sometime. And then a friend was like, dude, you have to watch Taken right now. And I was like, what are you talking about? He puts it on, and I was like, why didn't they show him punch anyone in the trailers? That if there are no punches in your Taken trailer, it is not accurate to what the film is, because he punches basically everybody. So
including like all of his mates.
Yeah, no, for real. He just beats up everybody. But I think that when that came out, they thought, oh, we're not going to have a winner with an action movie, so let's try and amp up that. And they were wrong. And
Maybe it's
then,
because Liam Neeson hadn't quite transitioned to action guy yet, right?
yeah,
So like,
I
oh, it's
think
a
that was
Liam
a big
Neeson
part of
film.
it.
We've got to sell it as like this drama.
Yeah. And then instead they were like, oh crap, we have a winner, even in spite of the studio work, we better lean into it. And boy, did they lean into it.
The drama
But-
fist.
So I feel like that's definitely accurate that Event Horizon wasn't marketed as a horror movie much at all.
Mm.
And it is a shame. I noticed that happens a lot with mainstream horror releases, especially in the 90s, when basically nobody knew what would work until Scream happened. That was kind of when people were like, oh, okay, so this is where horror is going now. Before that, everybody was just kind of feeling around, trying to come up with something. And they literally, like, look at the 90s. It's like, Deep Rising. Let's try that. That didn't catch on. What about a dinosaur in like a museum or something? And they'd be like, all right, let's do that. Relic. And like, they just would trying anything. And then when Scream happened, all of a sudden every movie was Scream. It was a self-aware, self-referential movie with, actors and actresses that were either on the WB or in line to be on the WB. It just kind of happened that way. So, and that's one of the reasons 90s movies, and especially 90s horror, is really interesting, because in the 90s, the Tarantino kind of changed everything for like the average Oscar worthy movie. It all of a sudden it was, movies were about crime that were going to get nominated for, best picture and stuff like that. But meanwhile, the horror genre was just kind of not sure what to do, because the slashers in the 80s had died out really hard, and you weren't really able to make any money off of them in the 90s. So they were just trying to figure out what to do. They tried making new Freddy Kruegers and new Jason Voorheeses, and none of them stuck. They did Candyman, that worked. But only the first two are reasonably good. The third sequel is pretty rough. So they were always, kind of struggling to figure out what would work. They like Wes Craven made the movie Shocker, which had Mitch Pileggi playing a serial killer who had been turned into electricity and starts killing people. That didn't catch on. So, they were definitely trying. They were throwing anything at the wall to see what would stick. And I think Event Horizon's a good example of that era of just trying a bunch of different stuff. And then, as usual, the studio getting chicken shit and getting cold feet and deciding that they know better.
It is weird how you often hear studios acting like, oh, horror doesn't sell. But horror movies always make bank.
Yeah. It's tricky.
Not Avengers Endgame stupid money.
No.
But like people want to go see a horror at the cinema.
Yeah, no, they definitely do. And it's funny because I work in film distribution, and I actually have been saying for years horror movies underperform comedies. And they in this smaller market, and they totally do. I make my living off of mostly comedies that I've distributed. But so it is, some of it is dogma. Some people just believe that you can sell a horror movie to anybody. But I agree, if you have a good horror movie with a little bit of money behind it, the public is going to really give it a chance, because they love to be scared. So, you take The Purge and you give it a chance, and it's a pretty good idea and people liked it. You try these different things. And that's the big problem with horror is it is a crapshoot. So like any film is, but so they'll be like, let's spend $90 million on a horror movie, and then it'll become so homogenized by their fear of losing the investment that it ends up not making the people who don't like horror movies happy, and it disappoints everybody who likes horror movies. And I think that's kind of Event Horizon's fate, ended up being that the marketing didn't get the people who would actually enjoy it to go see it, so they all found it on cable.
Yeah, I guess big budget horror usually doesn't go down well, right?
Usually, like, what I love that they remade a Friday the 13th and spent like 50 or 60 million dollars. It's like, okay, first one cost 350 grand, guys. Like, even with inflation, that was under $1 million. And it's just, they just spend all this money because I guess they're looking for prestige, but the audiences are just looking for an interesting concept. And that's why Blumhouse has been so successful, because they're like, we won't spend a lot of money, but we'll risk it, because if we make 3 of these movies and one of them hits, it'll cross collateralize the expenses of all the other movies, and then we can stay in business. So It's, that's why they're kind of the leading the industry. And you see places like Sony and Warner Brothers will occasionally basically make their own Blumhouse movie where they're like, they spent $5 million and there's one star in it. And I'll literally, when I'm in the theater and the logo comes up, I'll literally go, oh, I thought this was a Blumhouse movie, because they're completely using their formula. Anyway, I'm gonna watch it and see if it's good.
Yeah,
So-
when I'm watching a movie and it's like slick, I could tell a lot of money's been spent on it.
Yeah,
It just doesn't feel like horror. I want to see dirty. I want to see handmade. I want to wonder, like, oh God, did they really do that to that actor?
Yeah, I'm
That's
still
a
sitting
lot of
here
people-
wondering what I was coming into this one thinking. I mean, was I thinking of Jurassic Park in space? This was also kind of like just, I guess, movie overload time, because this around 97 is when I go see movies probably like every Friday, Saturday night. So half the time I probably didn't think much about what I was going to see. I was just like, oh,
Yeah.
new movie, stepping in, gonna watch it.
Why haven't they made Jurassic Park in space yet?
That seems to be
They
up
gotta
next,
get
I
there.
guess, because the new one's supposed to be crap, but it made bank, right? Wasn't quite successful.
It did pretty well. Yeah.
So
It was fine.
Sequel-
The bits
number-
where it had dinosaurs were great. It just spent way too much time not having dinosaurs.
okay, well, there'll be new movie number 4 for Jurassic World, so it's time to get off world. Jurassic World off world. Jurassic off world. There we go. There's their title, Jurassic Off World. I'll copyright that, and they won't use it. One of my I have a final thought. I was just thinking about Dr. Weir again and being like, he's kind of similar to Bruce Dern and Silent Running in a way. He's a little more murdery and a little more hell influence, because Bruce Dern's got his robots and flowers, whereas Dr. Weir's got Satan and gore. But otherwise there's some similarities, I think. A single-handed determination to just kind of float around a distant outer solar system planet sort of thing. I don't know.
The best comment I have for that is just laughing. Oh my God.
Who knows
If
what they-
they'd left him at the end and he just got to sit on Event Horizon and be alone in hell, then he'd be Bruce.
Maybe that's what I'm saying. The 3 did escape, and they didn't blow up the ship properly. Yeah, I that would have been my ending. Sure. Oh, okay, I'm successful. I'm here. What next? I'm gonna build some hell robots for myself. Oh, the giant metal spike, something like that. Okay, that's my final thought on this movie. And any from you folks?
Oh.
Luke's talking, but there's no sound coming out. He must be in hell.
Oh no. The darkness has him. The dark.
Hey, Luke, are you still in hell?
Oh, jump scare.
Okay, you were saying.
I was just saying that I pretty much already said everything I want to say.
Okay, well,
But then somehow my microphone decided to unplug at exactly that moment.
It's because it's haunted.
Yeah.
Everything is haunted now. Well, I will say, I think Event Horizon definitely deserves another look. I think if you've never seen it, definitely give it a watch. I think it's just cheesy enough and just good enough to just kind of get you all the way through it. I love the obnoxious jump scares because they got me. So I recommend, if you live with roommates, watch it with headphones and have those bad boys at a unsafe volume, and get ready to go to hell in space, sort of.
In space, no one can hear you hell. What was the tagline?
in Gehenna.
Okay, the actual infinite space, infinite terror. Infinite space is the game. Okay.
Matt, I just said go to hell in Latin. You've got to cut it there.
Nobody's plugging anything. Okay.
Oh yeah, I guess we got to give Henry a chance to plug stuff.
Yeah, the guest should be allowed to do that, I think.
No, he's not allowed. He wasn't good enough. He was late.
You tricked me. You tricked me. Well, since it's spooky season, I feel like this plug is fair. I have a podcast called Weekly Spooky, where every Wednesday we publish a brand new scary story, a piece of fiction narrated. And we've actually started growing the show recently. We now actually do 2 shows a week. We do a Monday show called Terrifying and True, which is true crime, folklore, something that's claimed to be real. And then on Wednesdays, we do our normal fiction show. So all you have to do to listen to it is either search Weekly Spooky wherever you get podcasts, or go to weeklyspooky.com, and it'll help you get in the spirit. I actually just got a comment from somebody saying that they can't wait to rake their leaves and listen to the show because this is how they get into their October mindset. And I was like, now that is a compliment, and I'll take it.
So is that why you were researching the Mary Celeste was for the new? True one?
That was the first episode we released because I remembered hearing that story when I was a kid and it stuck with me.
Cool.
Of course, I knew it as the Marie Celeste, so I had to find out that I was an idiot, and it was always the Mary Celeste. So,
well, and if you've enjoyed this podcast, we're on Twitter at MLSFS Pod. We're also on Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and you can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/podcastio.
So when are you going to get to South Carolina's Gray Man?
Ooh, actually, I think that's on the master list. I made a master list of weird things that I want to research, and I'm pretty sure that's on there. If it isn't, it is now.
Okay. Hey, look, are you going to do Latin again, or are you going to
Vale.
Okay, I guess that's the cut then.
Yeah, that one was just goodbye.
Well, I knew you couldn't repeat yourself, so.
Well, at first I looked up goodbye, and then I was like, wait, no, that's not good enough. I'm going to look up go to hell.
Oh, wait, that was go to hell?
The first one was go to hell. The second one was goodbye.
Oh, okay. So you got classier as we went on. Okay. Let me hit the stop on there. All right.